John? Oi! Can you hear me? Well, I'm a bit of a distance away, but I'll be right on screen. Never mind, I needed a bit of a flame. So, hi, I'm Ramirez once again. My name's Ramirez. Yes, friends call me Ogie. Um, my real name's Jose. If you're from Latin America, you know what nickname you give those people, but yeah, whatever. Whatever. We frog sympathizers here, if you know what I'm fucking saying. What else? Do stuff with a crew known as the Rabbit Hole Crew. You can check that out on therabbithole.show. Recently, it's been kind of slow because I got hella busy. And I think there's a lot of stuff going on in other people's lives too, so I haven't really communicated with anybody. So there is that. So what's there to say? All right, one of the newest things that happened is somebody returned, and it is why I named this whole video, Did It Really Have to Be This Way? And the short answer is no. Obviously, it didn't have to be this way. But the long answer is yes, it did have to be this way. Because I should probably close that door for noise purposes. No, I think I'll be fine. Either way. One of the reasons why the short answer is no is because if everybody was. It's kind of one of those things where you need. What do you call it? There needs to be a semblance of understanding of basic truths, right? Just things that we consider to be basic fact. And there's been a lot that hasn't been, right? Like some people still find it a contentious point to admit that 9/11 was an inside job or to kind of put those thoughts in your head. And that's kind of problematic because the thing with these truths is once you put down one of these posts, it builds into something bigger. So if we don't address, or at least in the public's mind, in the greater public's mind, right? This is why I always talk about the 100 monkey experiment, because just as there's thresholds within certain groups of animals, there's thresholds within us, whatever animal we are, right? There's thresholds. And kind of one of the last things I talked about, I remember being Benjamin Franklin, the quote unquote invention of electricity, and how it is attributed to him, but the experiment with the kite and the key was never recreated, nor was it ever done for a public audience. And basically, if you look into his MO, his modus operandi, or at least the way Benjamin Franklin lived his life, he did like to recreate a lot of his experiments, and he did it for his private club, and then his private club would end up doing them for the greater public or the greater populace, etc., etc. The point is, there's far more that we don't understand when it comes to history because we still believe in kind of a lot of these falsehoods. And where they came about is basically one person laid it down, another person kept building on top of that, etc., and etc. And it kept moving forward that way for like ever. Like ever. So when I say, did it really have to be this way? And I'm saying that the short answer is no. What I'm really saying is, if everybody was up to speed and everybody knew what was going on in the greater, what do you want to call it? I'm not sure how to word this. A lot of people have a lot of learning to do. A lot of learning to do. And by that I mean understanding fallacies and understanding that it is not okay to build anything on top of lies. Like, if it is never addressed that the building you're in was built on a faulty foundation, it's going to come crumbling down eventually. And kind of one of the things we're seeing right now is a lot of the 9/11 9/11 is still kind of one of those pivotal moments that allowed for a variety of different changes to kind of push forward. and I'm not sure how to word any of this because it's very difficult to explain very briefly that getting into the long answer and why it really had to be this way is because people had to see it manifest in their real life. Let's use those woo woo words. And kind of the reason why it had to affect people personally. And it was kind of one of the big key moments was the Iran-Contra scandal, right? It was widely known, or at least to some degree, it was widely publicized about what had happened in South America with the revolutionaries in El Salvador, with what happened in Guatemala. And just, it was kind of at that moment, George Bush, I think he was the head of the CIA at the time, he literally was looking at the public and being like, they're going to get me. They're going to get me. Like, oh shit, they know everything I did and they're going to come after me and they're going to make me pay for my crimes and blah, 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 blah. But nothing happened. And that was kind of one of those moments where they like looked at the public and were like, hey, we just broke a bunch of laws. We just coerced an entire nation. We just forced an entire nation to divide itself into two, kill each other. And they're looking at the American public, and we used your money, and you're not going to do anything to us? Right? And this was and I learned this bit of information from a C-SPAN talk, where some dude was promoting his book. But in this, right, I'm setting up an axiom, a truth. It is widely known about Iran-Contra scandal. And it's so funny, right? They called it Iran-Contra scandal when it had nothing to do with the Middle East. Again, obfuscating the truth. It's like you see obvious attempts at hiding the truth. You see another bigger populace that's like, hey, we have a bunch of evidence, we have a bunch of facts, and we have like actual ramifications that happen in real life. But the American public was like, oh, but it's not affecting me personally, so why should I care? And basically, once this aspect of reality was, I want to say, cataloged, observed, like once these principalities, people who actually have pushing power within, a global understanding, corporations, they were kind of like, wait, they're not going to do anything? We can keep doing this? Because like it's not really directly affecting them. They don't really know. And it just kept repeating and repeating and repeating, which is why we got 9/11, which is why we got martial law, which is what then instituted kind of like the spying that happened on journalists, kind of what instituted a lot of these, like, I don't even know how to, like, there's no real like sets. There's no word for me to describe all of the hacker laws that were put into place from 2009 to 2012. And it's kind of crazy, right? Like if you want to be a hacker in America, you gotta go from, right? You gotta get your data stream from here, go out of the country, and then back into the country, and it's not illegal. But if you directly go from data stream from US to data stream in US, you get immediately caught. And depending on the severity of what you're doing, blah, 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 you can get to life. Like you could go to just straight federal prison depending on what you're doing with whatever cybernetics you're working with. And I always thought that was crazy. I'm like, so wait, you can have accidental manslaughter, crash a car, do all that, but you can go to jail far longer for hacking than accidental manslaughter? So kind of back to, did it really have to be this way? Yes. So much has to be learned in the greater public's mind that if there is no, because you have to remember, like, we're playing statistics here, right? If any of this progresses forward, right, with Ghislaine Maxwell's case, it's kind of funny, right? Because when my niece's graduation was going on, her uncle, no, her grandpa, her grandpa, who was sitting next to his daughter, my niece's aunt. What did he say? Basically, the conversation eventually divulged into like QAnon and human child trafficking, and I brought it up to him like, well, I could see what you're saying, but have you ever considered thinking about how Homeland Security changed some laws, how ICE changed some laws, and now you're having a bunch of influx of people bringing in children who aren't even theirs? Like, just bringing up these truths, like, hey, I could see why you say that child trafficking isn't real, but consider the facts. Consider what we've seen done. And with Ghislaine Maxwell, it being a convicted case, a great video of a woman who's like, when I started this, she was 10 years old when she got brought into this. And it kind of like, it's a real big dent in someone's head when they're just like, whoa, you're a grown ass woman. What do you like? What? Right? So it's been a problem, and it's been a thing for over 40 years. Is what we can assume, because you just don't build these empires with workers, with a supply, a constant supply. Like, these things just don't happen that normally. Either way. So did it really have to be this way? Like, duh. Like, nobody would care. Like, I've always noticed that here in America, nobody cares, and it's very regional based. Like, nobody cares about the interrelationships between Mexicans and blacks in LA and in Texas. Like, these are two very distinct. I lived in both of these places, so I can really describe the difference in attitude when, like, it's just so weird how like different it is here in California than it is everywhere else around the country. Because I lived in New York too. And I never understood like why these differences occur, but it has to do with the fact that like Americans just don't give a fuck. They're going to do them. And with a lot of these conspiracy stuffs, nobody really cares. Because it doesn't affect them personally, because we've got caught up in the daily grind, the 9 to 5, making sure that we can sustain ourselves, provide for ourselves, maintain ourselves, etc., etc. So because it was a fine science that they figured this out, right? Like, they figured out how much stimulus needs to be in your life in order for you to only really see 5 years in the future without really. Because if you look at the infrastructure of America, it's really geared and set up in such a capacity where it favors the public far more than it does a few hands. But what we've seen happen is few hands have created an entire system to entice you, bring you in. So it goes back into answering the long answer of, did it have to be this way? And it's yes, because so many people are caught up in the grift. At first, when Donald Trump barely got in office, the grift was left, right, but on the television screen. What we saw, like at least what I saw, was people watching right TV, left TV, and they were digesting both opinions and then regurgitating whatever, like right here, and then they would speak out something similar to for what they heard. But then I saw, so at this point, I got more invested and wanted to know more about public opinion. And fully knowing me, I knew about Mumble, I knew about TeamSpeak. Mumble and TeamSpeak are voice over IP address, basically Skype. Like, they're video gamer. They're far more niche. They're far more underground aspects of like voice programs to allow you to speak to other people, whatever. And then Discord at this time was being popularized, so I decided to join a lot of Discords, and all I saw was the same thing. Everybody just amassed around the opinions of a variety of different YouTubers. So while I'm watching this, 2019's rolling around, YouTube's rolling around in itself, trying to figure out what to do with all this public opinion. And then you start seeing certain people get kicked off. And the only thing I noticed in what marked you for deletion or marked you for getting kicked off the YouTube platform in general was the rhetoric you spoke it and the effect that the rhetoric would cause. So towards the end of 2019, the only Q content that existed on YouTube was all the Christian, like JFK, Jesus returning BS. Then you also had like the super Q people who were like super into Q, but never showed any post. Like they would never actively show anything on their screen that could lead you to the thread or the forum at all. So I would even question, like, wait, so where are you getting your information from? Like, if you're not actually going directly to the threads, where are you going? How are you getting all these pictures? How are you doing all this numerology? Either way, that was with the Q stuff. But then I also saw on the inverse side, and by that I mean the intra side, the inside of the square, the inside of the playing ground. You know, think of the Masonic chessboard is what I'm trying to say. Within that realm, if you considered yourself an outsider, what you were listening to was stuff like No More News, or you were listening to like El Chapo Trap House. These were two very different sides, but they were the same thing. It was all ideologically based. It was all based on form factors that you could not change and you were born into. They would create these paradigms where it's like, you're trapped on this square forever, man. This is your playing chess piece. And like, and they would, everything was very angled towards like, this is your identity, this is your square, this is the part that you will play in this great game. So you had a right version of that and a leftist version of that. But they were both based on identity. None of it was based on your actions. None of it was based on like real form factor, like realistic shit that you see in like person. It was all based on like these utopian aspects of solving a solution, but like very movie-esque, like really weird stuff. But one of the things that I noticed in both sides was they lacked history. They lacked the understanding of that. They, at least the leftists, looked like they just didn't care. Like the leftists were like, well, yeah, it was always like a mental circus. But if you would look and ask the right side, that mental circus was far different. It was very tapped in to the vein of whatever happened in reality. So once they realized that they couldn't get Trump on like whatever they were trying to do with Russia, what you saw on the internet was Zion Dawn, and you had all of these new grifters show up talking about how he was there not for the American people but for the Jew, this and that, and the tiny hats, and he's a part of this and that, the Club of Rome and this and that. But that never led anywhere, right? Because the moment he got kicked out of office, all those grifters disappeared. And then because they started, what happened, at least when Zion Dawn got kicked out of office, what did they really see? They saw Biden literally hire every single person that was rejected by Trump, hire them in, and immediately go full force into the Zionist agenda. So it's kind of like, you said all this shit, but in reality, what happened? And I kept seeing this over and over and over and over again. And I always found it very interesting that there was no understanding of the reactionary aspect of the reality that they were living in and how quickly it reacted towards them to mold and shape their ideas. None of that ever occurred in their own head. So did it really have to be this way? Yes, it really did. Because once people got off the thumb of television, all they got stuck to was the thumb of YouTube. But even that got cooked. Even that got like, not royally fucked. But at the end of the day, the people who are doing the show understand what they're providing. They're providing a show. And they also They're going to stick true to their values. They're going to stick true to their principles, blah, 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 blah. Yawn. In reality is, they have people they're trying to appease. They originally had intentions of creating all of this with spreading a very particular message. All YouTube is like that. All of it is. I'm the only fucking weird autist who's like trying to like be like, what are you doing here? What are you doing? What you up to, huh? What you trying to do with them words, boy? Trying to sell me some more if I say. Either way. Really weird woo-woo that I always pay attention to. So, I'm somewhat of the opinion that yes, it all had to fucking be this way. Because nobody would have ever seen it. At all. I really do believe that if these circumstances were never to come or arise, and for people to not follow the mental gymnastics that was being told to them. Think about it like this, right? Joe Biden closes down all-American production of oil that Trump started. Boop. Then he also opens up the reserves, the oil reserves that Trump built up. And now what are we looking at in gas prices? Just a huge spike. But what was the reactionary answer that we got out of the beast, out of the system? Oh, it's Putin's fault. It's the war in Ukraine. It goes to show you that the mental gymnastics only work if you allow them to work, or if the populace allows them to work. Everything is about the court of public opinion. Everything. It's why I always talk and stress so much the stupid book, The Prince by Nicholas Machiavelli. Because that book is about politics. That book is taught in probably every single high-end political science class. Because it teaches you the importance of a leader having a public to lead. And having a public believe in his words because he sets the what do you want to say? The moral standard. He sets the standard of living conditions to some degree. Because it's all monkey see and monkey do, right? Like all society works because we trust it to work. We put our trust in, what do you want to call it? Not trust, but we all participate, right? It's a level of participation is what I'm trying to get to. Not that we have a high trusting society, because if you get to a high trusting society, high trusting to what? Authority? Yeah, dude. Let's trust Fauci. Let's keep doing that game. Like mental gymnastics. All of this has always been a game of like, how much do you subscribe to bullshit? How much are you willing to suspend disbelief? Because at the end of the day, it just all leads you to the same fucking place. I think way too much about this. What is my time? Only 30 minutes. Okay. I feel like I've talked way too much about, did it really have to be this way? I always, whatever. And yes, I am of the firm belief, like nothing will change my mind that things kind of did have to be this way. I don't think anybody would have woken up to the reality of the fact that, right, everybody talks about the Matrix and like the simulation and we live in da 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 da. I'm like, no. Your reality has been simulated because all of the infrastructure is controlled and managed by a singular entity. So when you have all that information in a single sign, yeah, it would lead you to assume that, yeah, we kind of do live in a simulation. But it's like, how much of that is just natural occurrence? And by that I mean, natural, divine, whatever, woo-woo. And then how much of it is orchestrated, planned, and, you know what I mean? I don't know, what do you believe in? Do you believe in natural? Do you believe in manufactured? Because that's the world we're living in now. It's a fucking mess. So with manufactured reality, with knowing and understanding the axiom of truth that our reality is manufactured because of the way media is kind of shaped, with the way education is kind of shaped, why would you believe that there was any other way of solving this nation's problems? How are we going to solve the money laundering problem with the industrial war, the military industrial war complex? How would that be addressed? How would we address the weird money laundering that goes on with nonprofits and politicians? How would we address lobbyist groups? How would we address the lack of literacy of people and their understanding of their judicial system? How would we address people and their lack of understanding of laws, their lack of understanding of rights? Like, there's a whole lot more that I could list. But once you start listing these problems, you start realizing, like, oh, well, Zion Don didn't do any of that. That's all I hear. I always love that part where it's just like you bring up all these facts and you're like, who would have done it? Tell me, who would have done it? Who would have changed any of this realistically? And I'll wait. Nobody. Like, we could have our favorite podcasters, we could have our favorite personalities, but even to that degree, like, you saw how quickly a variety of different I want to say it was the financial institute aspects of it, your lawyers, your like people who are the funding or the advertising aspect of things. Like, somebody had to go to Joe Rogan and be like, hey, you got to tighten up your act. You do this, you do that, it breaks this contract, or it breaks this agreement, or it does that, or it does this. And it's a lot of the way I've seen this beast work itself is through litigation, through paperwork, through the leveraging of bonds, through the leveraging of contracts, forcing you in situations to where if you don't do what we say, or if you don't follow these guidelines, it's just a different way of like flexing on somebody. And I'd imagine at the very tail end of all that, you get the pharmaceutical industry, knock, knock, knock. Get some big goons at the door. That's all you see. And and when your friends own all of the big prisons, it would be very easy to find bodyguards, but I'm just saying. Nobody likes thinking about these things, but I think it's fantastic. It gives me more material for write. It gives you material to write. It's kind of that aspect of like, does what is it? Entertainment mimicking life, or life mimicking art, or there's a phrase, I can't remember it. I'm not much of a. I feel like. Uh, why? Why did you have to do this? Must you really insist on such dark depravity? How dare you? We must be mindful of our existence on this planet. How could you? Either way, quite a lot to think about because, right, I'm loosely describing aspects of things and why they had to be the way they had to be. Because there is this blind level of faith that I never understood where. So I ask, are your wants and needs a byproduct of your environment, or are they a byproduct of your genes? You get into shelter, food, and all this other shit. But desires. What leads to the creation of desires? It's kind of what I want to focus on, because these are the things that drive us to do certain things, to go after certain aspects of our life. And when you have entire research firms, when you have entire teams into understanding your biological chemistry and that which causes these desires, Shouldn't you account for that mentally? Shouldn't it be shouldn't it be a conscious shouldn't it be a conscious form factor equation that should always go on in the back of your mind when you're looking at marketing stuff, when you're looking at advertisements, when you're looking at these new campaigns? Shouldn't it be well known to us the techniques that are being displayed? Why is there a need for obfuscating the fact that people are susceptible to these techniques? Not only that, but the science from thus it which derives from is treated as a pseudoscience. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. How is this treated like a pseudoscience? But it's one of the most like money making aspects of everything we do in life. Oh no, but it's a pseudoscience. It's not even real science, because real science is material fact, and it's just like, well, if it's a material fact that this company, after implementing this strategy, made this much more money, wouldn't that stand to establish? I don't know. I'm just looking at the science institution, and I'm just like, very interesting. Very interesting. Kind of how I find interesting that it was American scientists who were eugenicists that inspired Hitler for a lot of his ideology. But yet, we're like, oh no, Hitler bad. Hitler bad. But the American scientists though? Oh no, no, no. We're gonna name schools after him. We're gonna name mountains after him. We're gonna give them nice public buildings. We're gonna put their name everywhere all over the country. But Hitler bad. Not the guys that influenced them. Hitler bad. I'm always like, bruh. I love that shit. I'm like, dude, these are some of the best. I don't know what you call them, fallacies. Like, I call them just fallacies, where I'm just like, these are established truths that everybody believes in, but yet if you kind of think it out, it's like you're you would ask yourself, am I really this dumb? Like, am I really this stupid? Nah, it's just they never taught you anything. They never taught anybody anything. They kind of bank on that. So ask yourself, did it really have to be this way? Nobody cares until you put on the mask. Nobody cares until you start playing the game. Or until everybody starts playing the game, is what I should be saying. If anything, that's what Cicada 3301 was trying to recreate. They were trying to recreate like the early Chinology, Scientology protest, where they were just trying to see like, hey, if there are these super geniuses out there on the internet who are doing all of this weird, super intelligent genius shit in order to just fucking troll people on the internet, is there a way to weaponize this autism factor? Welcome to DARPA, where we experiment with you and you never know. I don't know why I did that. So, welcome to what I assume it was Cicada 3301. It was just a form factor way of trying to recruit people who weren't necessarily interacting with their normal facet of infrastructure. And by that I mean the education system, their grant system. Basically, if you want a real fucking job, like, you have to interact with these facets of reality or reality in order for you to establish yourself into these paradigms, etc., etc. So Cicada 3301 was just a weird way of getting geniuses. Like, hey, can you solve these really complicated puzzles? Can, like, you figured out that we, like, fucked with this JPEG image and, like, put some extra bit of data that if you put into this decryptor turns into this message, da 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 da. It's called Capture the Flag, by the way. There's an entire, like, college, what do you want to call it? A college competition where all it does is it just gets these kids teaches them like, hey, you're gonna navigate the system through command line, and your goal at college is to secure it. It's to secure it, and you're basically playing it's like a simulated war game where you're trying to maintain a company running, but you're doing it like with 4 to 5 computers, and everybody has access to them, and you have to maintain like a receiving and ongoing server. You have to maintain phone calls as if employees were calling you asking problems about their logins or this or that. Basically, they would simulate a company setting with the bare minimum as possible. And then on the other side, there's red team. Basically one team gets to set up, they get to secure their systems. The other team will eventually get access to these servers, and then they'll start trying to figure out ways to how to basically hack into the server. And it's a simulated game that happens in college. That's where we're at now. And nobody knows. Nobody knows. The only reason I know is because I was a part of the program that recruited kids from high school for this shit. And then I'm like, whoa, whoa, who funds this? DARPA, NSA, Nordman Group, Raytheon. Very interesting. And then sometimes some of these kids wouldn't even go to college. They just get straight up scoped out of like, right? The company saw it as a better investment for them to teach the kid than for the kid to go to whatever stupid college they were about to go to. And they'd offered him pretty good checks too. I met a few of them. So, consistent basis. Where was I going with this? Did it really have to be this way? I would say yes. Yes again. Only because, right, I'm keeping track of all of these different things that I've seen occurred. And again, if you don't know about these industries, if you don't know about these technologies, or if you don't know about these if you right, like you would have to go to a college that has this program that's like nationwide. And I don't even remember looking. I don't even think I ever looked to see what colleges were in that. But I know that number 1 was Cal Poly Pomona, and number 2 was Berkeley. Like these were the top 2 schools in the whole nation. And the one thing I do remember was any of the high school competitions. The high school competitions were all dominated by North Hollywood and Washington D.C. But you know, Washington D.C. I'd imagine it's just parents being like, "Hey, I need you to help my son with this thing," etc., etc. So there's this new aspect of maintaining yourself, and you know, being a educated or a cultured individual now. Fuck that, dude. It implies so much. Like you have to actively keep track of what Saudi Arabia is doing, what Russia's doing, what America's doing. I wouldn't say Latin America matters at all. The only thing that matters that they do is whatever America decides to do for them. Welcome to, what was that deal that it was George Bush Sr. that did? I don't even remember. Axioms of truth. Yes. Yes. The truth. I don't know. Discovering the truth is so. But the truth is subjective. It all depends on what you know. It's like, no. You want to know where the truth lies? In the reactions of people. If you really want to know what the truth is, look at what they do. Look at what decisions they made. Because it gives you some form factor of understanding of like, well, if that person decided to do this with their career, or they decided to make that decision or vote that specific way or set a course of action of doing whatever the fuck, that gives you so much more telling information than trying to assume that, well, you can't figure out other DARPA programs. Just like, no. Obviously I can't. But what I can do is keep track of what people have said. Keep track of what people have done from that point on. Like, establish truth, you know what I'm saying? Be a detective, because people have motives and shit. It's like, oh no, but Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's dead. Like, that doesn't mean shit. If anything, that just, if he ended up dead, it should tell everyone that everything he did was true. Him being dead proves Q was right. Just cut, done, deal. Like, I don't care what anybody fucking says. And the reason why is because I remember very clearly having debates with people telling them Jeffrey Epstein is going to get arrested. And everybody told me no. Zion Dawn, no. Trump is going to help. I'm going to help my friend Epstein out of this great deal. We're going to fake his death. And you know, there are some people that actually believe that. I don't even want to go there. But I remember debating with people and them telling me, nah, Epstein's going to get off scot-free. Nothing's going to happen. This is all just going to be like whatever, blah, blah, blah. And when he got arrested, everybody was like, the judge is going to let him off. The judge this, the judge that. Like, nobody saw it coming that he was going to off himself. Well, you know. But nobody saw it coming. I remember what was being said back and forth, and the reason why I really put a lot of validation on this is because I was hanging out on politics. If you know what politics is, it is a giant ass server where a lot of people hang out. But, you know, with a lot of these melting pots that tend to arise from the internet, you should always assume that there are very nice baseball capped individuals in those places. If you do not know what I am saying, I'm talking about the Fed boys. These Fed boys are everywhere. And by Fed boys, it's kind of funny. Like, you would imagine like it's the FBI. Nah, not really. Like, they won't. That's a waste of time, waste of resources. But what they primarily care about is, at least these melting pots tend to attract a lot of nonprofits. They tend to attract people from like nonprofits. They tend to attract people from like colleges. I'm not saying they're all paid. I'm not saying they're paid actors. But I am saying that they're paid for their belief systems. Does that make much more sense? Where I'm not saying they're like, oh, the government's running this program. Oh, what was it? Think Blue? Okay, like Hillary Clinton actually did that, but that's different. That's like very different. Because like she actually used the nonprofit to control narratives. Very different from what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there were just these nonprofit organizations that essentially pay college students at their localities to do what they do. But caveat is, what usually tends to happen is these people they attract, or at least they want to engage in this political discourse. And the ones who tend to survive the weeding out process in politics will stay there. Like, you know, they're friendly people, but it's just always assumed that they're being paid for their belief systems. And the reason why I say that matters is because in their world, it validates them. In their world, it validates their beliefs, the way they view the world. And you always have to also gauge, like, how much up your own ass are you? They don't do that. I do that to them. But I do that. I don't know. I'm always like calculating things in the back of my head. Not a good thing. I know people tell me to stop doing that, and I'm like, I wish I could. I honestly wish I could. So, did things really have to be this way? Yes. People had to see this shit happen in their own lives, and eventually they had to stop. They had to pull their head out their ass to be able to see what the fuck's going on. To be like, oh, I've been up my own ass for a while, haven't I? It's a very fucked up analogy, but like, to some degree, that is what has to happen. And you know, the gas prices is just the form factor of it. I think there are many more dominoes that are going to fall. right? Because, like I said with Jeffrey Epstein, him dying and him being killed in prison literally proves everything. But now with Ghislaine Maxwell getting a confirmed verdict, and let's be honest, that case isn't fair because I couldn't imagine that court doc looking like Israeli intelligence, this and that intelligence group, this and that, trafficking from this part of the ocean to this part of the ocean, with this many underground submarine bases, da 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 da. Like, I don't think we're ever gonna get that rap sheet. That's a rap sheet somebody has to deal with. That's what I'm curious about, because you can't just set up an enterprise with a supply and a demand without having employees, without having a supply and demand, without having clients. And I think that's what we're going to see, hopefully, moving forward. Because, like, dude, that R. Kelly shit, at the same time, I'm like, bro, these people are desperate. Think about that. Why would they handle the R. Kelly case time wise in the same timeline? Oh, it's like, right? Everybody who's like me is like, oh, that's obvious. They're just trying to obfuscate for like normies. But the normies is what matters. It's like, dude, eventually you have to look at them and be like, yo, you a dumb fuck. Like, you just a dumb fuck. Like, how this, like, literally the last 5 years, nothing, nada, just nada, my boy. Of okay, you know, I think about that shit all the time. What's my time? Very good. 47 minutes. Very special number. You know what I'm saying? 4, 7. Yeah, I think I'm gonna end that there because I have no idea what else to say. Um, I have no idea what else to say. Nah, I actually do. Just because I always like repeating it. Did it really have to be this way? It was like the short answer is no, it didn't really have to be this way. And the reason why it didn't have to be this way is because people should know and realize that, like, hey, catch up with this. Like, this is some real lingo. This is some real stuff. If you look at supply and chain and demands and how these networks would work, this is how it would be run. You know, there was this case where a veteran out in Arizona discovered the cement factory. He discovered some really weird shit, took pictures, took photos. Oh, but his channel got wiped, he got deleted, and he vanished into nothing. Right? Like, there are these real things that if, you know, but the problem was media. The problem was the dependency syndrome. I want to call it. Do we call it that? Do I want to call it that? The dependency syndrome that everyone right now currently has, which is they just can't walk away. They have to stay hooked up to something that's affirming their belief systems. Like standing on your own 2 feet is fucking hard. Okay, sorry, paraplegics out there. I don't think whatever. I don't think any cripple watch me. Hey, I'm crippled too. I've got a spine injury. You know what I'm saying? People out there be problems and shit, leaky butts and problems. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. I've lost myself in time. You know, having the device that gives me the ability to control the screen when I do not have a mouse probably should stay near me. And with the long answer, I don't really want to answer the long answer. Did it really have to be this way? That long answer has, I'm like, bro, how do you begin to describe to people that, like, hey, you have these invisible truths that you don't ever verbalize, but you follow to the dot. Like, you will never deviate from this pattern of behavior because these were ingrained into you from an early childhood. Like, Like once you hit 18, once you out of the indoctrination system, there are so many things that are set in stone from like an educational standpoint of view and from a cultural standpoint of view. It's like, well, fuck. You're kind of set in stone, and there's very little advice anybody could give you right now. And that happens to everybody. Like, I think about what advice I could give my 18-year-old self. Nothing. Could I? Nothing. I think about this often enough. I don't really think there's anything I could have told my 18-year-old self to guide me in the right direction. Like, one of a good aspect of this was I knew how much of a debt trap college was at the time, because like I had watched some Alex Jones thing where he was talking about like, look, do the math, this much. That when I walked out of college, I was like, I need to walk away with a good chunk of this debt gone. And that was a great decision to make at that point in time. But right, there was so much truth in front of me. Like, hey, there's all this other stuff you could do. If I would have pursued my like the computer stuff that I wanted to do at the time, which was like making stencils, because I was super into Shepard Fairey at the time. I was into Shepard Fairey, that Obey stuff. Banksy, what was that stupid movie he came out with? Like, I think about it, if I would have pursued that route, I would have been a very different individual. Life would have played out very differently. And I had the truth in front of me to tell me like, hey, this is what you need to do. But I didn't follow it because everybody else around me was like going to college. Everybody, like, there was so much more affirmation for me to go to college than there was for there to exist any other paradigm of reality. And looking at what's occurred with the cultural point of view, right? This is me trying to answer, did it really have to be this way? It's like, jeez Louise. I don't think anybody ever could. Just because there's so much false. Like, I had a lot of truth in front of me to tell me that college wasn't such a good idea for me, because I don't have that kind of brain. Testing and the form factor that education usually gets delivered to me does not work out. I usually learn better on my own. Or just with no restrictions, or with no box. This is the box. This is the only way you're allowed to look at this box. Can I just take that thing outside of the box and look at it? No. The box. That's all I ever saw when I was growing up. At least that's the best way for me to describe it. There was so much more focus on the box than trying to learn what was inside of it. This is the only way for you to contain this thing. The box. I don't know why I get that in my head. So describing how there are these truths that like, oh, this is the way life is. This is the way I should do things. This is the only way that I could solve this problem. XYZ. Like when I got my back injury, the only solution was getting the replacement, the disc replacement. There was no realm of anything else in my head. That was the only way, until my sister, my oldest sister, who's super ADHD like me, she does research on it, and she's like, no, there's a solution. It's called spinal decompression therapy. And with spinal decompression therapy, I've changed my life. But then you get into the holistic aspect of life, and then you get into all these things lead into there's a thing that is reactionary to life in maintaining this box, into maintaining this. This is the only way you're allowed to look at it. This is the only way you're allowed to exist. This is the only way that life must be. You must trust this. You must trust the box. But that thing inside, like, you could pull it out. You could look at it from different angles. No, the box. That's all I ever saw. Just teachers showing you this box. And it's like, hey, can I hold that box real quick? No. Only look at it. Try to recreate what you're looking at. And I don't know. I I never had that reliance on affirming my reality with doing what everyone else did. So it was quite easy for me to walk away from society and be like, yeah, I'm gonna be an outsider. For whatever reason, just be like, yo, all you niggas like worship this box. Just take the thing outside. Whatever, just take it outside, kind of look at it from different angles and be like, whoa, that's a thing, dude. And it's okay to have that opinion because other people are like, no, 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 no. What do you mean you have an opinion about that thing without the box? This is a poor, shitty analogy. I think I'm gonna end it here. Thank you for watching. My name was Ramirez, Frog Bear. I need to showcase my art more because I added the 2 little masks now. Very happy with that mask. Yes, yes.